You know, a few years ago, a commenter on That Guy with the Glasses, really more of a troll, threw out a bunch of insults at me for taking so much time to deconstruct and analyze a kids show like Power Rangers. That it didn't deserve to have so much thought put into it. It was just a dumb children's show. Episodes like Dr. K are the counter-argument. Just because something is made for children doesn't mean it still can't be sophisticated. Just because it's meant for little kids does not mean it can't be well written. And just because it's about people in spandex punching robots does not mean it can't also emotionally move you.
Here we are at long last, the final day of Thom-tober. However, instead of talking about
Skunk! Such big stink in such a little skunk.
cancer, I'm instead going to express my opinions on something that I have neglected to talk about in detail for the majority of this series: the movies. Or specials, as most people call them. In this one video, I will be talking about all 13 of them. Why? Well, not only are most of them presented in a different way than the regular episodes, more like actual movies, the lack of the TV show theme song and original opening credits and things, except for the first two, but also because I seriously want to update my old shitty reviews on some of these movies. For those who don't know, I have actually reviewed 3 Thomas movies in 2015 and 16 before my infamous Blobber movie review: The Adventure Begins, Sodor's Legend of the Lost Treasure, and The Great Race. I really want to delete those old reviews. Not only was there barely any editing in them, with long pauses, repeated statements, and a lot of ums, but I misunderstood certain elements from those movies. I got certain facts and information wrong, and my opinions about these specials might have changed 6 years later. Those old reviews were all just unscripted cringe fests, and I really want to show you that I have somewhat improved since 2015 by talking about them again today. Alright, we've got roughly 14 hours of Thomas content to talk about with so little time. So let's just start things off with calling all engines. What a really bad note to start everything off. I mean, where do I start? I'll give the production team credit. This actually does feel like a special event, being the first ever hour-long episode made to celebrate the Railway series' 60th anniversary, building an all-new airport, every single railway engine working together to get it all done, and not to mention the grand return of Lady and Diesel 10 from Thomas and the Tragic Railroad. In 2005, my retarded 9-year-old self thought this was the coolest idea ever, like Avengers 1 levels of cool. Yep, retarded is the best word to describe myself back then. Of course, I was too distracted by all the happy trains running across the screen to put together that not only was this sort of false advertising, but the special was completely mean-spirited. First of all, what do I mean by false advertising? Well, when I see the Fat Controller yelling "calling all engines" on the DVD cover, even indicated at the very beginning of the movie, "calling all engines," I was expecting to see all engines helping out, like every single train model the production team had, and they kinda did that. Rusty, Bill, and Ben hadn't been seen since Season 7. In fact, Rusty is represented with his smaller Season 4 model, with the better face size. Derek makes a faceless cameo in a music video. George came back after Season 5. Daisy returned after Season 4. Lady and Diesel 10, like I've already mentioned. And Mavis got a bigger role than usual in this special. But that's it. That was all they used. What about Arthur, Doug, Oliver, Donald, Douglas? If you had Daisy and fucking Derek, why not Boko? He is a kind Diesel too. Or what about Murdoch? He would have delivered all the suspension bridge sections they needed in just one trip. He would have done a better job than Thomas struggling to push 2 sections at a time. And my second big problem with the special is how unbelievably mean-spirited everyone is. So, Ari and Bert bump into Thomas and Percy. Just because, at this point in the show, they went from being scary, intimidating scrap diesels to just straight up school bullies. So what does Thomas do about this? He doesn't try ignoring them or telling anyone about their behavior. He thinks it's best to be rude in return. He delays Ari and Bert's timber delivery, and he gives Diesel trucks of bananas instead of bricks. Hell, Diesel didn't even do anything to warrant Thomas tricking him. He just warned him not to give him any trouble. You know the saying, 2 wrongs don't make a right? Well, in this case, it should be 57 wrongs don't make a right. The Diesels and Stoomies keep bickering, delaying, and bullying each other for pretty much half of the special. Thomas proves his strength, Diesel throws paint all over him, then Thomas pushes Ari, even though he wasn't the one who bumped the paint wagon, then Ari pushes James, who did nothing wrong, Gordon bumps Ari, Diesel bumps Toby, Emily bumps Diesel, Bert bumps Henry, Henry pushes Diesel, and it never fucking stops! Just get to the point! Why didn't the Fat Controller tell the Steam team he was going to renovate Tidmouth Sheds? He was there that morning to tell them all about the airport, so why didn't he warn them about the refurbishing? Even if the diesels weren't delayed, the new sheds still wouldn't have been finished that evening, so he had to tell them to sleep in other locations anyway. After all, the Steamies worked hard all day on the airport, and it was only half finished.
And the airport is only half finished, wheeshed Thomas.
And to add insult to injury, this was how the whole endless conflict between the Steamies and Diesels started. If the Fat Controller just told the Steamies in advance, this never would have happened. Both the shed and the airport would have been completed a lot sooner, and the planes would have arrived on time. Now, you are all probably wondering if I was disappointed or angry over what they did with Diesel 10 and Lady. No, not really. I was disappointed as a kid because I was under the mindset that Thomas and the Tragic Railroad was canon when I was younger. But now that most fans now brush it off as non-canon, I don't really mind it. The Magic Railroad is like an alternate universe take on the series, like a different dimension similar to the TV show, but it's filled with magic engines, gold dust, and the borrowers. But calling all engines is part of the main canon, with realistic engines, people who operate them, and everything. Diesel 10 must have been a recent addition to the Northwestern Railway, like Rosie is in Season 10. Or Emily in Season 7 and things. The Fat Controller brought him to work at the scrapyard, crunching and breaking up pieces of scrap and loading them into trucks ready to be taken to the smelters. And as for Lady, She is not real. She only appears in Thomas's dreams. In a way, she's sort of like the Princess Luna of Thomas and Friends, giving young engines wisdom, messages, and advice through their dreams. Jesus, when was the last thing I referenced anything MLP related? And since this special was made during the beginning of the Hit era, there are songs and learning segments in it. Oh, I don't mean that they are bonus features on the DVD. No. I mean they are permanently part of the special, and they actually progress the story in a way. Thomas needs to take the bridge sections to the suspension bridge. There's a learning segment for which route Thomas should take to get there. There is one where you need to pair a diesel up with a steam engine, and vice versa. The airport won't be finished unless you do. Thomas wants to play a trick on diesel. There is a segment where you have to guess which truck is the wrong one to take. Wait a minute. The narrator is asking the child audience which truck has the wrong load. Thomas shunts the banana truck to Diesel. Diesel takes it to Tinmouth Shed. It remains as a pile of demolished rubble. The Steamies go off to sleep in different areas, making them cross, starting this whole rivalry between them and the Diesels, and thus everything gets delayed. So this segment is asking the child audience to pretty much start the conflict. So that means, in some aspects, this was all the children's fault. Oh god, this special is awful. There are a few things that I do like about Calling All Engines though. I like all of the vocal songs made exclusively for it, especially Busy because of how catchy and fast-paced it is. Any stock footage that they used here is not from the classic seasons. Not even from Season 7. They just reuse footage from various Season 8 episodes or unused footage they filmed. It was really nice seeing some of the classic characters like Lady, Daisy, and Derek one more time, and I honestly like the background music for the special, especially in the last 10 minutes when it gets more emotional because it's nearing the end of this huge story. And coincidentally, I think the only good thing to come out of this special was the final scene where we see the new Tinmouth Shed and Emily moves in. I know this was their way to make Emily more of an essential main character, but I like the fact that after 2 seasons of build-up and us getting to know her, her spot in the show is earned respectfully. Remember this. But those positives honestly don't salvage much. This is still a completely boring, repetitive, mean-spirited, dragging, and severely dumb hour of content to sit through. Oh god, how many more movies have we got? 12? Oh, Jesus Christ. The Great Discovery. Let me tell you, it has been a torturous, boring, painful experience sitting through every episode of seasons 9, 10, and 11. And when I finally got to The Great Discovery, I was at a loss for words. These 60 minutes felt like the best 60 minutes I have had in days. Anyways, this one is above average, actually. It is much better than Calling All Engines, I can tell you that for free. There is quite a lot to like in this one. They are actually adding in some lore to Sodor's history with the old town of Great Waterton, but it's been explained in the same way they established Fearless Freddy, in that we were supposed to know about it, but the show never told us until now. But the set of Great Waterton is one of the better sets of the Hit era. The songs in this special are actually the best songs I've heard in ages. They are really catchy, they have some good lyrics and rhyming, some have different speeds and genres, and then there's Thomas You're the Leader in the end credits. It's one of the best Thomas songs ever made. Clearly, now I understand why I keep hearing this song in many YouTubers' Thomas's series intros. It's catchy, has a great beat, and for once, it isn't sung by the generic, bored child singers they keep using. It's sung by a professional, adult rapper. I liked the fact that they had used one hell of a lot of models here, including ones that they hadn't used for a while, like Arthur, Diesel 10, Dennis, and Terrence the Tractor. And this special brings together all of the established types of models in this era. The standard gauge Northwestern engines, the narrow gauge Scarloey engines, and even the Sodor construction company. Yeah, they still had these models even after Hit themselves cancelled the Jack in the Pack series. I wonder why they never used them until now. But the thing that completely saved this movie for me is the one narrating the whole thing. Pierce Brosnan. After having to listen to Michael Angelis's downgraded narrations for 80 whole episodes, plus the way he yelled every single one of his lines for James and Percy, hearing Pierce Brosnan's quiet, calming, soothing voice was just heavenly for me. It seriously felt like honey to my ears. He does have a fair amount of oomph to his performances when needed. He does a dramatic tone during tension scenes, like when the bridge collapsed or when the trucks crashed into the waterworks tower.
Stanley's trucks rolled away, faster and faster. It smashed into the tower. As the tower crashed to the ground, bricks and dust exploded everywhere. All the hard work was wasted.
And during a fun scene, you can even hear him chuckling at times, showing that he was genuinely enjoying his role here.
Stanley and Percy were playing and joking. Both engines had told the workmen to pour on more bubbles. Percy was giggling and Stanley was laughing even louder.
He stated in an interview that he loved reading Thomas stories as bedtime stories for his kids, and his performances here reflect this.
Thomas felt terrible. He knew why he'd done it, but he couldn't tell the Fat Controller and the other engines. He felt too ashamed. So he said nothing.
Some people might not like the bedtime story-ish narration, but I'll gladly take it than having to listen to this again.
Have you seen the new engine
Would
yet?
you please shut the hell up?
The only real problem I have with this special is the story. The base story is honestly fine. Duncan tricks Thomas into going down some old tracks, Thomas accidentally comes across an old abandoned town, and the engines restore it in time for a big celebration they apparently hold every year, along with the thousands of other ones. But after the song Jobs Are Plenty is played, Thomas's character takes a bit of a downturn. Firstly, not listening to the Fat Controller about Stanley, showing that he is still as obliviously deaf as he was before. Second, it clearly shows the Thomas hates the new engine trope. It kinda made sense in Emily's New Coaches. It was a bit of a stretch in Thomas and the New Engine, but I don't think it was justified here. And this isn't the last time we will see this trope. Trust me, it's not like Stanley was being bossy and ordered the engines about rudely like Gordon or James would have. No, he is genuinely kind, caring, and he's positive about the other engines, including Thomas. Thomas was just being a selfish jerk, really, all because he found Grey Waterton. He thinks he should be in charge all the time. But at least halfway through the special, he realizes his behavior after taking it too far, and he tries to make amends before disappearing. Unlike a few other specials we'll see later on. Also, how the hell could Thomas blow his whistle if his firebox was extinguished long before then? So, The Great Discovery may be above average overall, but it's still a nice, calming 60 minutes with a decent story, better than usual model work, well-improved songs, and a brilliant one-time narrator. It may not be the best Thomas special ever made, but after sitting through the 3 painfully boring, repetitive seasons that came before it, it sure as hell feels like it. Hero of the Rails. This has to be the first special of the series that truly felt cinematic. The previous 2 looked and felt like hour-long episodes, but this one truly felt like an actual movie. From the roll call remix and the stylized opening credits, to the showcase of all the new voice actors at the beginning.
Fizzling fireboxes! What was that?
Bubbling boilers.
Bust my buffers! What's my paintwork?
Slow down, Speedy.
Trembling tracks! Who was that?
All the way up to the emotional ending.
Sodor will always be your home too, hero.
I know, Thomas. Thank you.
There is a lot of things to like about this movie. The animation is really nice, detailed, and has plenty of weight and momentum. The new voices are really good, and most of them fit the characters well. In the UK version anyway, Hero's voice actor, Togo Igawa, did an amazing job as him. The overall story was pretty good as well. I like that, as with what they did with Great Waterton last time, they are adding their own lore into Sodor's history. The narration from Michael Angelis was the best it has ever been since season 6, I think. It's loud and exciting during the action-packed moments.
Hero's new lamp broke loose and hit Spencer. Now Hero's engine started to judder and jitter. Parts fell off, they clanged and they banged onto the track.
And it's quiet and softer during the emotional moments.
The Fat Controller stared at Thomas. Thomas was worried. He was now sure the Fat Controller would scrap Hero.
Although this movie isn't perfect, of course. The lighting makes everything look really dull and rather dark. Ben Small and Keith Wickham's performances as Thomas and Percy could have been better. Hero, being the first engine to arrive on Sodor, might have screwed up the actual Sodor history. I have a hard time believing that Thomas can be faster than Spencer, because after all,
He's the fastest engine in the world.
Victor's UK voice is atrocious, and Kevin only existed just to use the same joke over and over again, which wasn't really funny to begin with. Everything else I have to say about this movie, I might have already mentioned in my season 13 video. So this was a really, really good start to the CGI series. It could have been improved in some areas, but for what it is, it gave us great animation, great voice acting, and an unforgettable new character in the form of Hero. Misty Island Rescue. God, this special was awful. I mean, right down there at the bottom 3. One of the only good things about this movie is the opening credits. No, really, one of the best things in this whole fucking movie is the first 90 seconds. Not only does it have its own stylized credits, like Hero of the Rails had, but the music is just gorgeous. I know everyone has already made this comparison, but how can you not listen to this music without thinking of the Pirates of the Caribbean theme? I do like how seriously the events of the movie are played out. The Sodor characters are worried for Thomas, the music is always dramatic or epic when a rescue is in motion. When Thomas and the logging locos are stuck in the tunnel, they don't joke about it, they are worried that no one will find them. The song during the end credits was really good. I like that it's a completely different genre from what we're used to. Country, western, singer and all.
Misty Island Rescue, here we go. Here we go. Misty Island Rescue, here we go. Here we go. With boilers on the bubbling, the engines are coming. Misty Island Rescue, here we go.
Even though it sounds too American, like the logging locos themselves, it's still catchy and singable enough for me to like. And debatably, the best thing in this whole movie is the after-credits scene.
You'll be laughing on the other side of your boilers soon, silly steamers. Yes.
In 2010, this had me unbelievably excited, not just because of Diesel 10, but he was portrayed to be as evil as Scar from The Lion King. His evil laugh was beautiful. It indicated that Diesel 10, and by extension, Nitrogen Studios themselves, had a long-term plan for him, and we had literally no idea what was going to happen next year. Just the fact that this was the first time a Thomas production had a teaser for what was to come in the future was amazing. And for some reason, Mattel never thought to do this in any of the ARC production specials, which makes this scene all the more chilling.
Yes.
God, I love that scene. But the rest of the special? It can rot in hell for all I care. Let us count all the plot holes, shall we? So, the Fat Controller is building a new search and rescue center, which is basically an emergency services facility for the island. That I don't have a problem with. They need to build the place with Joby wood, since it's the strongest wood in the world. Joby wood is fictional, of course it's the strongest. Thomas thinks Diesel shouldn't pull the logs because...
I'm sure the Fat Controller means a really useful steamy. You'll never be that.
Such a prejudiced dick. After a chase scene with Diesel, he dangles over a section of unfinished bridge and the Joby logs fall into the sea. 1. Logs don't usually sink in water. You know all of those hard as hell balancing games people do on logs? That's because they normally float. And 2. Why the hell is this bridge just left unfinished without any barriers?
It is with great pride that I officially open this unfinished bridge.
As a reward for rescuing Diesel that day, the Fat Controller sends Thomas to the mainland search and rescue center. What? Why? Is he hoping he would find more Joby logs on the mainland? I think building the rescue center or finding more Joby wood is a better priority than this. So Thomas and Spencer get sent away by ship to the mainland, but since there's no room on the ship for Thomas, he decides to go on a raft changed to the ship. Firstly, what was the original intention for that raft? What was its purpose? And secondly, why are they going by ship? Every single Sodor map shows an eastern rail bridge that goes straight to the mainland. Why not just go along the fucking bridge? Although, I have a theory that Vickerstown Bridge during the Hero was the first engine on Sodor years was just a simple brick bridge over the channel, similar to the viaduct. But then, from Misty Island Rescue to Season 16, they decided to take the brick bridge down and build the drawbridge in its place. but this has never been hinted at in the show itself, so I'm calling this a plot hole. So the chains on the pointless raft break away, and Thomas floats helplessly out to sea, until he ever so luckily lands on a pier on Misty Island. I find this to be the most lucky thing in the world, that the raft not only bumped into the pier, but that it lined up perfectly with the rails on the pier, and that the pier has rails on it in the first place, with no buffers either. Although this is Misty Island we're talking about, a place with hundreds of tracks. For some reason, a barely structural bridge that should have collapsed long ago, 2 logging cranes that can somehow work without any operators, and of course, 3 engines who think that threatening to throw Thomas into the valley is a good idea for a joke. The logging locos. Their and Misty Island's existence is just absolutely baffling to me. They were deemed too naughty and dangerous for the mainland, so they were sent away here in exile. So, does that mean Misty Island is a place where engines rot and die? Well, no, because they are still kept in steam by throwing logs around, which serves no purpose, and just load them onto flatbeds only to push them into the river, again for no reason. Why do they even have Old Wheezy and Hee-Haw? What's the point of loading logs onto flatbeds if they're not going to be sent anywhere? Misty Island has no ties to the rest of the world whatsoever. Oh wait, my mistake. There's actually a tunnel that conveniently goes all the way to Sodor. What? How in the hell does this work? Since when was there ever an island south of Sodor? How can there be a tunnel that leads all the way to the search and rescue center? Why was it boarded up the first time? Is the tunnel underwater? Well, if it was, I'm pretty sure the weight of the ocean might have flooded it by now. I'm done with the plot holes here. My brain is melting just thinking about them. Other problems I have with this movie is how frequently they keep going back and forth between Sodor and Misty Island. I don't mind that kind of thing if it weren't for the fact that most of the Sodor scenes are not even 30 seconds long. Misty Island, Thomas is missing. Misty Island, we must find Thomas. Misty Island, okay sir. Misty Island, the Fat Controller with Captain. Misty Island, the tunnel has been boarded up for years, sir. Misty Island, keep looking. Misty Island, yes, sir. Misty Island. Unless any of those Sodor scenes actually progress the story, they are mostly pointless. And also, the missed opportunity with the search and rescue center in this movie. So Thomas is missing, and they have to find him. Why couldn't they have just used the finished rescue center to find him? It's called the Search and Rescue Center. This place was made for a story like this. They could have used the building's radars or whatever they had to search for Thomas. But you might be thinking, oh, but if the building is complete, then there's no reason for the logging locos to bring the Joby logs to Sodor in this movie. Well, why not store those logs in a goods yard somewhere? Use them as a backup in case something urgent needs to be built. But the thing that ultimately kills this movie even further is the writing, not the story itself. Mostly, I'm talking about the narration and the dialogue. About 80% of it all is rhyming. Like literal rhymes.
I make good decisions, that's what I was told. I will not be fearful, I'll be brave and bold.
Diesels are no good, the steam is all we say. But I'll show them they're wrong by the end of the day.
I will not be scared. I will find a way to puff home to my friends by the end of the day.
Don't delay! Off away!
I'm almost there. Soon they'll all know that steamies are the ones who puff too slow.
One biff, one bash, and there's never a crash.
Gordon can heave and haul. You will hurry and scurry.
The bridge did shake, but it didn't break. Hooray and hurrah! Now we'll load the logs fast. Nothing will stop us. Our worries are past.
This isn't a Dr. Seuss movie. This is a TV show adaptation of a book series that never relied on rhyming at all. Not to mention, there is also way too much alliteration, Bash and Dash's voices are terrible, and constantly hearing Ferdinand's catchphrase 17 times in just 40 minutes. 17 fucking times. And that's just in this one movie. There is still seasons 14 to 16 as well. Jesus. I'm done with this movie. Forever. I have now reviewed this movie, I have expressed my opinions on it, so there's no reason for me, or any of you people for that matter, to ever watch this movie again. Unless you feel like torturing yourself, I guess. Day of the Diesels. After that chilling and cool as hell teaser at the end of the last movie, does this one live up to the excitement and hype it was building up? Nope. This movie is just as bad as the last one. Once again, the only good thing about it was the opening credits, and at least this one doesn't feature the logging locos at any point. But it did feature 2 fire engines with no clear personality, one of them having a terrible design flaw, Percy thinking he is being left out, when really Thomas was just doing what the Fat Controller asked him to do.
Thomas, you will show Belle around our island.
And Diesel 10 having a confusing plan. So, Diesel convinces Percy to go to the Diesel Works after feeling left out, where Diesel 10 tells him about the state they're in. So then, Percy gets the idea to tell Thomas to ask the Fat Controller to rebuild the Diesel Works, because Diesel 10 thinks he will listen more to steam engines than to diesels. Why couldn't Percy just tell the Fat Controller himself? He knows he is just as useful as Thomas is. Anyway, so later on, Percy brings Kevin to the Diesel Works. A crane was what they needed. Percy manages to convince Thomas to go to the Diesel Works to take Kevin back to the Steam Works. Then, Diesel 10 will straight up tell Thomas to ask the Fat Controller for the rebuild. This is all lining up pretty well. But then, out of nowhere, we get this.
Victor has left the Steamworks.
Yes?
That's good, Percy. Very good indeed. We are going to take over the Steamworks, and you will lead us. When we have the Steamworks, the Fat Controller will listen to us.
But what about Thomas?
Thomas will stay here with Kevin. Then I will send for him to join us. When the Fat Controller has listened to me.
Why does he need to take over the Steamworks? It has nothing to do with Diesel 10's plan. His plan was to force a reliable Steamy to ask the Fat Controller to rebuild the Diesel Works. Thomas is right there. He should tell the Fat Controller to give us a new Diesel Works, or Pinchy will have an early lunch. If you don't comply, I will cut you up into a pile of blue scrap. But no, instead he wants to take over a repair yard that doesn't even fix diesels. That can be brushed off though. And then, this is how the climax ends.
Diesel 10! What do you think you are doing? You, Diesel 10, are an engine on my railway. You will do as I say, when I say it. Do you understand?
No one ever seems to understand why he is acting like a punished child here. This is Diesel 10 we're talking about. He is the most evil character in the franchise. He's got a sentient claw that can cut metal up into pieces, for crying out loud. He's the kind of character who shouldn't be taking orders from anyone. Why doesn't he just growl furiously that his plan failed, run away, and say, "Mark my words, Steamies, you haven't seen the last of me. I'll be back." there are other problems the movie suffers from. While the first scene with the fire was admittedly a really cool scene, everyone is working hard but failing, the music is suspenseful, the situation is taken very seriously, I soon forget about the epicness because of Belle's design flaw.
Chuff to the washdown!
But Belle couldn't puff. Belle couldn't huff. She had run out of water.
I wonder why it took the Fat Controller a whole year to include fire engines to the search and rescue team. Were there literally no fires on the island for a whole year? I have taken the already existing fire brigade out of the question because the show staff had at this point.
Sodor steamies don't go to the diesel works. It's dark, and it's dirty, and it's full of diesels. Diesels can be devious.
1. Prejudiced. And 2. What about Mavis? What about Salty? I know they have been erased from existence by now, but what about Boko? Or Derek? Or Dennis? They are not like most other diesels. I find it hard to believe that Percy would be friends with Diesel 10, especially after he gives him an unsettling greeting.
Diesel's been telling me all about you. You're a very special engine, Percy. Why don't you hop in?
If Percy thinks most things are scary at this point in the show, then he and his slimy, manipulative voice is much scarier to him. Why did Flynn stay at Tidmouth's sheds? There are sheds for him, Belle, and Butch at the rescue center. Right there. They could have thought of something else for a that's the last straw moment for Percy. There's also lots of unnecessary narration in this movie. I mean, we don't need to be told every single time Diesel 10's claw cracked, or Percy wheezed, or clickety-clacked along the tracks. Watch this scene with the narration taken out.
We want to be fair. Then we can help you.
How will you help us?
That would have been much better, wouldn't it? Paxton, Norman, and especially Sydney didn't get any roles, voice lines, or even any name drops in this movie, except for the end credits song, which is really good, by the way. They were only used as background filler. They were originally going to be Dennis, Splatter, and Dodge, hence why they all have the same basis. But I would have found it weird if Splatter would have rolled off to the steamworks with the others and left Dodge behind without any wheels. Hey, wait a minute. The entire diesel works was on fire later on in the film. Sydney would have had no way to escape because he is on a hoist and his wheels had been removed. How in the fuck did he survive that? How come he hasn't been traumatized by what he had been through? I mean, right in the middle of a burning blaze in a collapsing building with no way to escape at all. I would have been scarred for life at that moment. So, I don't think this film is worse than Misty Island Rescue, but it's still pretty bad. A confusing story, Diesel 10's voice is too high-pitched, it didn't live up to the hype, and some characters were just used as background filler, and... Wait a minute. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Oh! Blue Mountain Mystery. I think this is the best Nitrogen movie, and the best one written by Sharon Miller. No, seriously, the last 5 movies were written by her. And thankfully to all of us, only 2 of them are as awful as the episode she wrote. Oh, and as a glimmer of hope for what was to come, the credits state that Andrew Brenner was the script editor. Yeah, they really wanted to make sure that this final production was the best the crew could deliver. There are so many reasons why I think this is one of the best Thomas movies ever. And no, it's not just because of the narrow gauge engines, although they were all portrayed really well here. I'm talking about the story. So, Thomas is sent to work at the Blue Mountain Quarry. He hasn't been sent to the quarry just because. The usual engine, Paxton, gets damaged during a bridge collapse, and someone needs to take his place. Toby is going to take over Thomas's duties on his branch line. It really took them until now to remember Thomas has a branch line. While working there, Thomas spots a little green engine. Luke. It is revealed that he did something he strongly regretted, and after seeing Thomas save Skarloey from an accident, he becomes more open to him, and Thomas asks him what Luke did long ago. He was sent to Sodor by ship along with a little yellow engine. He wanted to be let off the ship first, but when he was lifted, he bumped into the yellow engine and it fell into the sea. It was so damaged afterwards that he assumed that he was sent away to the smelter's yard, and he hides away in the quarry because he thinks the thin controller will send him away from Sodor if any mainline engines see him. This is a really well written backstory, and from Luke's perspective, it is really fucking dark, thinking that he had caused the death of an innocent little engine because he didn't wait his turn. And the mystery on who the yellow engine is really good. But in the UK dub specifically, it is downright genius. Not only are some people not aware of Victor's model from behind, not just the different color, but it's the voice that has people thinking. I bet you that they purposefully waited until this movie to put David Badella's Victor voice into the UK dub, just to make the mystery more mysterious. Because up until this movie, Victor was voiced by Matt Wilkinson in the UK. But I guess the bigger reason for the voice change was Victor's Spanish dialogue. I doubt Wilkinson is as good at speaking Spanish as Badella is.
Hola, ¿a dónde vas? ¿Vas a Sodor? Calderas hirvientes. Buenos días, Luke. Me llamo Victor. Es un placer volverte a ver.
And when we hear the story from Victor's point of view, it's an amazing plot twist. Not only is it a great backstory for how Victor started life on Sodor, but it fits in perfectly with the events Luke had explained. Although my only nitpick with this is the jetty. It was never there before, and it's never seen in later productions. It was just conveniently put there, just so that the kids wouldn't have to imagine an engine sinking and drowning. The animation, taking the dull, dark look aside, is amazing. I think this was the best animation Nitrogen Studios had done at the time. The lighting, the camera angles, the weight, the momentum, the detail, it's all so good for the eyes. I just hope that none of the animators were treated badly during this and the previous 4 years. There is a scene in the movie where the engines recall their worst endeavors, and they actually recreated scenes from the classic series in CGI. This is the first time in what feels like 10 seasons where they reference past episodes or the Railway series stories. This was so unexpected and so mind-blowing back in 2012. The writers finally did their fucking research! This movie was the final Thomas production to have Michael Angelis, and Michael Brandon too, I guess, as the narrator. And while his deliveries are quite slow, honestly, he still had plenty of energy, softness when needed, and spunk when needed. Am I allowed to say that word? Spunk? Anyway, the songs are pretty nice. Working together is quite catchy, and it was rather surprising to hear it on 2 separate occasions during the movie. We haven't seen that since The Great Discovery, and the end credits song is really heartwarming and charming. It really made this movie feel like a finale. While most of the new characters, like Winston, Owen, and Merrick, don't have much in terms of characters, at least Owen served as part of the story, hauling Thomas up to see Luke. I feel like Merrick and Winston were just put into the movie for comedic effect. Merrick is constantly sleeping, and Winston can't drive smoothly. However, I really do like Luke. He's just a cute little Irish sweetheart who I deeply sympathize with. And Michael Legge's voice performances are brilliant. You can really feel the emotion in his deliveries.
It was my fault. If I had waited my turn, Thomas, I would never have knocked him into the sea.
Also, I liked how they had tried to expand on already established characters, specifically Victor and Paxton. Victor has a really good backstory, and it was charming to hear how he learned the English language, and Paxton, originally created as a filler character, is now good-hearted and well-meaning, but gullible, naive, and easily misled. So, this might be an unpopular opinion, but I think Blue Mountain Mystery is one of the best Thomas movies ever made. The animation, the story, the backstories, the characters, the dark implications, they were all so great. It really does feel like a grand finale to the Nitrogen era, and I like that this era that had really good animation but terrible writing ended with a really good movie. And while Nitrogen Studios went on to do... Thomas and Friends kept on going with King of the Railway. When the trailers for this movie were released in 2013, people were thinking this was going to be worse than ever. I mean, the animation looked terrible compared to Nitrogen's, and the story looks very simple, changing the backstory of a real-life engine, some new Earl character we've never heard of, and it seemed to have a specific theme or gimmick to it. I didn't have my hopes up very high for this movie after watching the trailers, but after watching this movie, plus the few season 17 episodes released beforehand, I was not expecting it to be this good. This was the first production for the Brenner era, and it definitely shows. There really is a stark difference from Andrew Brenner's writing to Sharon Miller's writing. Brenner and the rest of the production team were using the 1-hour format they had to its advantage. It had a bit of a quicker pace than most Nitrogen movies because they had so much to show and tell. The history of Ulstead Castle and King Gondred's crown, Spencer introducing the Earl of Sodor, Thomas meeting the Earl and finding out what the Earl is doing, restoring Stephen, him looking for his new job, realizing he's not as fast or strong as he used to be, Thomas, James and Percy working hard, the accident with the trucks, searching for a lost trapped Stephen, and so on, so on, so on. And the writing showed massive signs of improvement. No rhyming, no alliteration, lots of backstory for many elements and characters. The dialogue and banter between the engines felt genuine. Some of the lines got a chuckle out of me.
What are you doing up there?
They're turning me into an aeroplane!
Really?
No! They want to examine my undercarriage. I may be old, but I'm not that old. And before you ask, I never saw dinosaurs either. I've seen people do all sorts of things that don't make any sense. Or maybe he wants to make tea in my boiler.
and the old characters were written closer to their true personalities. Gordon and Spencer's rivalry, James's high opinions, Toby's kind honesty, and none of the engines were dumbasses. Not even Thomas or Percy. Some parts of the story do fit in with the main plot, like for instance, Henry bursts his safety valve, meaning Thomas, Percy and James take his train to Ulfstead and we see the castle restorations. Emily takes Henry to the steamworks for repairs, but also to meet the old engine Thomas had told them about the night before. We thought they had brought Jack back into the series just for fan service, but actually, he digs away the rock slide to help Thomas look for Stephen. Although, I think the only plotline that doesn't really go anywhere is the racing subplot with Gordon and Spencer. I feel like this was put into the movie just to promote Connor and Caitlin toys. This is produced by a toy company after all. Now, about the animation. I know it isn't perfect. It doesn't have the same polish as Season 16's animation, and some mainline sets still look pretty bare, but there is some things about it that beats the previous companies. The lighting and colors are a lot brighter, which is more beneficial for a kid's property. The engines' faces are more expressive. The engines don't wobble about frantically when they bump into anything, and they can make these huge, gigantic sets, like the entire Ulfstead estate. So, in most cases, Ark's animation is better, even in its beginning stages. The songs are pretty good. The first one is just the same song they used in the last movie, but they changed some of the lyrics to fit on a more general sense, so it wasn't all lazily reused. The other two songs are fine. The last one, It's Gonna Be a Great Day, has a nice beat to it, but the problem with this one, Searching Everywhere, and loads of other songs to follow, is that there's not really much differentiation from one another. They are always sung by either Sam Lewitt or Eggplant, and they don't have different genres of music like the Nitrogen era songs had. So overall, King of the Railway is a really good start to one of the best eras of the show. The animation looks cheap at first glance, but is better in other cases. The story has a few nitpicks here or there, but is structured and told terrifically. The characters are well written and portrayed, and the new characters are interesting and fun, especially Stephen and Sir Robert Norby.
Put the armor up here with me, boys. He can be my god!
This movie brought me back to the Thomas series. It made me want to keep watching it again, and it only gets better from here. For a certain distance. Tale of the Brave. One thing about this movie that was improved since King of the Railway was its story. It wasn't like 4 different stories meshed together into one movie production. This one was just one singular connected plotline. Every story element plays a good role and is connected to each other flawlessly. The scenes at the clay pit begin the story with the giant's footprints. Thomas returns there and sees Marion, who plays a decent role in the climax. Gator plays a great role because Percy shockingly mistakes his strange design for a monster after what Thomas told him. Gator, with his kind and wise personality, helps Percy feel more brave and confident, but then James, being the big red dick that he is, scares him with a pile of scrap he was frightened with in an earlier scene. There are so many moments where random story elements come together to create a nice, fully connected story. None of these scenes are filler. They are all woven together. Hell, it's woven together with an episode from season 18. The new characters are really great. Gator has an interesting design, a nice voice, a really relatable backstory, and he gives out a rather mature and great moral that is later displayed perfectly during the climax.
Being brave isn't the same as not feeling scared. Being brave is about what you do, even when you do feel scared.
Marion. It's hard not to love her. Her fast-paced energy, her humorous dialogue, her chatty nature, her unique design. She's just a hoot. Timothy's character would be displayed better in season 18, but even in the first scene of the movie, he is well portrayed. Him being the straight man against Bill and Ben's cheeky personas, and him rolling his eyes over Marion's hyper energy and cheerful singing. And Reg is... there. The scene with James at the scrapyard is the only scene he appears in this movie. He served the same role as Connor and Caitlin did in the last movie. Merchandise.
Well, there's a surprise.
The animation has been slightly improved. It's not at its peak yet, but the lighting, the shading, the rain, the fog, the transitioning sky, this amazing shot, the spooky tunnel, the stylized opening credits, the expressions, and the fact that the sets have an autumn setting to them, something Nitrogen didn't even do. The scene where Cranky is holding back the ship was really intense. They were really pulling Cranky apart in this scene, and the voice acting felt really genuine.
Let go, Hero!
Speaking of, the voice acting received improvements as well. Ben Small's Thomas voice was at its absolute peak here, and Keith Wickham has improved on his Percy voice as well. The music is really good. Monsters Everywhere is one of my favorite songs ever. That random song in the middle was uplifting, and Let's Be Brave in the end credits was a nice catchy piece. I know some people hate this one, but it's a guilty pleasure for me. And the background music was phenomenal, especially the piece that plays during the final scene and ends the movie on a great note. So, Tale of the Brave is an improvement. Improved animation, improved story, improved voice acting, and etc. Sorry if I haven't got much to say about this one. I had taken a bit of a break after watching season 17 to work on other videos or rest myself. I'm sure I would have had more to say about Tale of the Brave, but at the moment, that's all I've got. The adventure begins. This one is easy top 3 material. I mean, a CGI retelling of the stories featured in the first 2 Railway series books to celebrate its 70th anniversary? That is a bold choice. The way they adapted these stories for modern day is just amazing. They retold them as faithfully as possible, but they also added some new elements to them to not only make them more fresh, but to tie it all together to be of special length. For example, not only was Thomas painted blue to fit in with the rest of the Northwestern Railway, but he was given his number 1 because the last bearer of the number, one of the coffee pot engines, had broken down and was left in a siding, unable to be repaired. That is clever. Another thing that makes this production truly special is the animation. I mean, the first 80 seconds of the special alone says it all. My god, look at this. This almost looks like a Pixar movie. It is that good. Look at the way the engines move, the textures, the camera shots, the reflections, the weather, the lighting. I am really glad this animation wasn't just used for this movie. It is the best animation in the entire franchise, and you can clearly see how much attention was given to the detail. They gave James his black livery from the Railway series before his red paint, and gave Thomas a new green livery showing his railway of origin in Brighton. They used the actual dialogue from the book looks too.
He was out of breath and his wheels hurt him. But he had to go on.
A goods train! A goods train! The shame of it! Oh, the shame of it! My doctor has forbidden me to pull. You'll have to find another engine.
There's only Thomas, sir.
You'll have to do it then, Thomas. Be quick now.
I bought Edward's trucks for him, sir, but they were pushing me.
You've a lot to learn about trucks, little Thomas.
They're pushing me! They're pushing me!
They acknowledge the engines have undercoats, the coffee pot engines built by the Fat Controller, the original breakdown train, James's wooden brake blocks, even putting in the original books' paintings in the end credits. The only things they either forgot about or they just didn't have the budget to fix is that Tidmouth Shed still has 7 berths instead of 6 and that Henry isn't in his old shape. I don't get why they didn't give it to him. I know giving Henry Gordon's boiler would have been harder than just making Thomas Green and James Black, but if they were to construct entirely new models for the breakdown cranes and their coach, why not Henry's old shape? Henry's steaming problems might not have been that important to the story, but someone must have noticed, especially considering the reason Thomas was asked to pull Henry's train.
I think there's something wrong with my boiler. I might not be able to pull my coaches today.
Another problem with Henry is his fear of the rain. Like, he has an actual fear of the rain. It's not like in the original story where he didn't want his paint wet and ruined. He looks as if he has a phobia of the rain. Ombrophobia to be exact. I know the original writing said he was afraid of a few drops of rain, but he wasn't afraid. But one of my favorite things about this movie is Thomas. He is so great in this movie. He is cheeky and plays jokes on the big engines like Gordon, but he's also kind, caring, and helps out wherever he can. Even though Henry's fear of the rain is completely backwards, at least it gave us a lovely scene where Thomas carefully encourages Henry to come and to help let go of his phobia. And he also did this because he learned not to take other engines' trains without permission, like how he learned to wait to be coupled up when taking Edward's trucks.
But wait, I need to tell you something. I know. I have to be coupled up before I go. You don't have to tell me. I've learned my lesson.
And I love the fact that Thomas thought to chase after James and attempted to slow him down. He wasn't thinking about himself like he was in the rest of the movie. He sees someone in danger and tries to help because he thought it was the right and decent thing to do. Even though James crashed anyway, he did try his best and did all that he could. I love it! And I also love John Hassler's voice performances here. They make Thomas very sympathetic and charming.
You're not a big engine.
Yes, I am.
No, you're not.
Well, I was big enough to do my work on the mainland.
And not only did they adapt some of the earliest Railway series stories and the first 7 episodes of season 1 of the TV series, but also, as a complete shock to everyone, they also made their own renditions of the original Mike O'Donnell and Junior Campbell music. No, I'm serious. Listen to it yourself.
Jackson, get the engines every time. Jackson, run the engines off the line. He's a really useful engine, you know. All the other engines, they'll tell you so.
That was something none of us saw coming. You can see why this is genuinely considered as the best Thomas movie. It has amazing animation, amazing voice acting, amazing music, amazing attention to detail, and amazing characters. It understands and respects the original source material the TV series was adapting. They may have added new elements to the story, but they are elements that tells the stories really well, add more lore to the series, and still honors the books. Arc Productions didn't need to make this movie, but they did it anyway because they truly did care. Easy to say, this movie is way too good to be an Asta DVD exclusive. Sodor's Legend of the Lost Treasure. I cannot believe this movie exists. This fucking movie is the most cinematic Thomas has ever been and ever will be. Probably. I can't even come up with words to describe how amazing this one is. The first 2 minutes and 20 seconds alone give you an idea on what you are in for. This movie has the most detailed, most expressive, most realistic, most creative, and the best animation in the entire damn franchise. I thought seasons 19 and 20 looked amazing, but this is one level further than them. There was more effort and budget being spent in these 60 minutes than on any other episode or movie. Speaking of big budgets, the voice acting. Not only do they have the usual actors, but we've also got Olivia Colman as Marion. Regular or not, she's not exactly cheap. Jamie Campbell-Bower as Skiff. Sir John friggin' Hart as Sailor John, one of his final roles unfortunately, and Eddie Redmayne as a one-off performance as Ryan. How much of a budget did they have to afford this many big stars? The characters are really well utilized. They had brought back loads of classic characters that we haven't seen in ages. Not just for story purposes, but I'm guessing for anniversary celebration purposes. They had brought back Donald and Douglas the Scottish twins, Max, Monty, Oliver and Alfie from Jack and the Pack, and even Daisy the diesel railcar at the very end. This was unbelievable, and the new characters were just as great. Ryan was a nice addition, Skiff has a great redemption, Sailor John is an amusing, charming, and very threatening antagonist, and even the miniature engines from the Railway series. Even though they didn't serve that much in the story, seeing these three in CGI in the modern series was absolutely mind-blowing. The music is phenomenal. This is the final Thomas production, canonically speaking, with Robert Harnshorn as the show's composer, and they made sure that his send-off was a big one. They hired an actual legit orchestra to do the background music this time, and it all sounds beautiful. It makes the calmer scenes more calming, the sadder moments more saddening, and the epic scenes more suspenseful. No wonder they received an EVCOM Screen Awards Gold Award for this. And the vocal songs, Never Overlook a Little Engine and We Make a Team Together, are really great songs. The former is catchy, amusing, and nice seeing the actual characters in the show singing it, and the latter ends the movie on a really satisfying conclusion. And the story is fantastic. It's well constructed, well paced, and each plotline connects together really nicely. building an all-new branch line, finding an abandoned pirate ship and its treasure, stopping a rogue pirate from stealing it for his greedy needs, and the amusing subplot of Marion mistaking Oliver the Excavator with Oliver the Great Western Engine.
There can't be two Olivers!
Yes, there can!
I love that the writers finally acknowledge this strangeness. Even though there are a few nitpicks with this story, like that fan service scene with Doc, Donald, and Douglas, the miniature engines are not serving much in terms of the story, and Henry seeing Skiff in the mist and Salty telling him about the lost pirates, when many agree that it should have been Thomas instead.
That treasure didn't belong to you, and it didn't belong to the pirates. It was stolen.
This is still an amazing story. It's exciting, intriguing, amusing in some areas, has calm, quiet moments to catch our breaths, and a suspenseful climax with a satisfying end. I'm being completely honest when I say this. Sodor's Legend of the Lost Treasure is my favorite Thomas movie ever. The Adventure Begins is a very close second, although that special was just retelling stories written 69 years prior, with some additional scenes and changes. Lost Treasure, however, is a completely original story, built from the ground up, and it is great in a lot of areas. That, combined with the best CGI animation in the show's history, the amazing orchestrated music, brilliant special guest actors, lovable new characters, lovable old characters, and massive attentions to detail, not just in the graphics, but with the visuals, earns this movie's place at the very tip top of my tier list. I wish it was 2015 again. The Great Race. That was a thing. Seriously, that was a whole hour of content I had just watched, and yet I have forgotten everything that has happened. I think that's the problem with this one. I don't think there's anything from this movie that really makes it stand out, or has anything that will be carried over into the show itself. What about Vickerstown Station? That's gonna be in the show. Yeah, but they could have just introduced a set in season 21 and nobody would mind it. We'd be like, oh, we finally got visual representation of Vickerstown. Neato. What about the international engines like Ashima? They will be in the show later on. Yeah, but this movie was released on DVD during the middle of season 20. The Blobber series wasn't for another few years yet, and how did we know Blobber was going to happen at the time? Well, isn't the Great Railway Show something that makes this movie unique? Yeah, but the railway show itself doesn't actually happen until 35 minutes into the movie. The plethora of marketing videos released in 2016 made us think that the railway show was going to be the main plot point, but it's not until over halfway through the movie that we get to see anything of it, and even then the show itself is really just a background thing. The actual plot of the movie is Thomas trying to get into the show, wanting to change who he is in order to. An Indian engine tells him that he's fine the way he is, then a mishap makes Thomas go to the railway show anyway, and he competes in one of the competitions because Percy was nervous. It's not really a bad idea for a story. For an episode, I don't think this is big enough to be the plot for a 60-minute movie. And how do I know that? Because they have done this story before, back in season 11. I should know. That was one of the episodes I watched before giving up. I feel like The Great Race should have been called Wasted Potential the Movie. I bet that there were plenty of other storylines that could have been better than the one we have got. It could have been about Ashima training Thomas for some of the events at the railway show. Their newly found friendship could be tested when Thomas thinks she's being bossy, but she was only trying to help him. Or it could have been about Philip bumping into Vinny, the mean American engine, many times by accident at the show. He soon learns to stand up for himself, and he gives Vinny his comeuppance somehow. Or, the more popular idea I have discovered, it could have been about Gordon wanting to beat his boastful brother, the Flying Scotsman, after finding out he will be racing at the show. So he asked the Fat Controller and Victor to streamline him so that he could have a chance of winning. His boiler explodes due to a lack of a safety valve, but makes up for his humiliating loss by stopping Vinny from harming Philip, the engine he kept treating poorly. This pleases the Flying Scotsman more than winning the race, and Gordon feels just as glad that he had helped a good friend. Any of these stories would have been better than just a rip-off of the episode Dream On. And that's almost all I can say. The songs were catchy and well sung. The animation is good. The sets are huge and well detailed. Ashima, while rather nice and cute, doesn't have that much in terms of character, and most of the international engines are just pointless models solely made to be used as background filler. We would know more about them and their characters in those fucking YouTube videos made to market the movie. So yeah, that was The Great Race. It was a forgettable blob of filler, so moving on. Journey Beyond Sodor. Well, wasn't that the most pointless special in existence? Seriously, I can't see a reason for this movie existing because hardly anything from it carries over into the show itself. Every single other special had a reason to watch them because there were new locations or characters being established that will carry over heavily into the next season. The hit era had the new airport, Stanley, and Great Waterton. The nitrogen era had Hero, the Search and Rescue Center, Misty Island, Flynn and Bell, Den and Dot, the Diesel Works, the Blue Mountain Quarry, and Luke. And the Brenner era gave us Ulstead Castle, Stephen, Gator, the Scrapyard, the Clay Pit, Marion, the Breakdown Crane, Glynn, Thomas's Origins, Ryan, Skiff, the Miniature Railway and its engines, Alsborough Harbour, the Harwick Branch Line, Vickerstown Station, and all the international engines. Hell, they even reused the background diesels and the Great Railway Show set from The Great Race in this movie, so they weren't entirely one-off elements. But this movie gave us nothing to make us want to watch it again. The movie takes place away from Sodor, the place 99% of the entire series takes place in. We never see the steelworks again, the events of the movie is never really mentioned again, and only a third of the new characters here return in later episodes. Merlin and Beresford. One of them is just pointless filler in both his appearances. If there was anything I actually liked about this movie, it's that the animation is still good quality in some areas. Some of the songs were quite good, including The Hottest Place in Town, I Want to Go Home, and The Most Important Thing is Being Friends. And the best thing of the whole special is the first 2 minutes. The detailed biography of the Northwestern Railway, those massive aerial shots of all the sets, and Henry's crash was really great and suspenseful. But unfortunately, those weren't really enough to salvage this movie for me. There were loads of things that dragged it down. The animation, while well executed in most areas, is ruined by the distracting and inconsistent bouncing on every character. But I have already ranted about the bouncing in the Season 21 video, so I'll say nothing more here. While the Sodor sets looked as detailed as they were in Season 20, the mainland sets, by comparison, look so empty and rushed in some areas. I know this was because of the bankruptcy situation at the time, but maybe if they had cut out all of the Beresford scenes and didn't waste so much of their time animating the bouncing, then maybe they'd have the time to add more to the sets. There's also the confusing decision on where this movie takes place in the timeline. So there's a scene early on in the movie where James is talking to Rosie. Red Rosie, meaning that it must take place after Season 21. But then, during the establishing shot of Brendan Docks at the beginning, Carly isn't even there. So does this take place before Season 21 or after it? Or at least does it happen after the fastest engine on Sodor, but before Cranky at the end of the line? Which can't be the case because Edward is sleeping at Tidmouth Shed in both Carly episodes, but then he is still sleeping there in Journey Beyond Sodor. But if this takes place after the Rosie episode, it makes even less sense because the episode that clearly takes place right after it is A Shed for Edward, where he permanently moves to Wellsworth Shed and says goodbye to the others. But then why would he be sleeping at Tidmouth on multiple occasions if he is sleeping at Wellsworth now? And yeah, this makes no sense. While some of the songs like The Hottest Place in Town and I Wanna Go Home happen over long periods of time and they establish the steelworks or Thomas's feelings, the other songs are the equivalent of 20-second long conversations stretched out into 4-minute songs. Who is Thomas? I'm Thomas. Oh look, there was a track right underneath you the whole time. I'll just keep going instead of wasting my time here. Goodbye. We're the failed experiments. We can't do anything. Oh look, there's Merlin, the magical stealth engine. Oh, that's cool. So can you help me? We just told you, we can't.
I'm invisible, or can't you see?
Why does everybody have a song in them? Doesn't anybody just say yes or no anymore?
Speaking of which, Beresford is one of the most pointless characters in the show. You could have cut out all of his appearances in this movie and it wouldn't have made a difference to the story. Thomas gets lost at the huge junction and ends up in the yard where Theo and Lexi were. And later, during the discussion after What Can't We Do, Thomas could faintly hear James talking to Hurricane and Frankie on the way to the steelworks. Thomas realizes what they're going to do to him, and Merlin and the others agree to help Thomas save James. See? Pointless. And the other characters? Merlin is the best one, with his clever invisibility belief, but he doesn't speak first until 45 minutes into the movie, and doesn't properly appear until 53 minutes in, so he just feels like a waste. Theo has next to nothing going on with his character, other than having a lisp. Lexi is unbelievably annoying, and desperately trying hard to be amusing.
He's a stealth engine.
And Hurricane and Frankie aren't really good villains. They could have been more sinister and threatening about their wants. Like, they will threaten to melt Thomas down and mold him into girders if he tries to escape, giving Thomas harder decisions to make. But no, Frankie explains their problems at the end of the movie like a poor crying little child, and that they deserve to keep the experimentals at the steelworks to help them with all their work. Despite the fact that just a few seconds ago you were evilly and maniacally trapping us here to do your bidding. This movie is just a mess. The story is a bit better and is more interesting than The Great Race. I mean, when I heard that they were going to do a movie taking place entirely on the mainland, I was really excited because the writers had written nothing but quality material at the time. But the execution leaves a lot of better things to be desired. One more. Just one more movie, and then I'll be done. How bad can it be? big adventures. It's no surprise to anyone subscribed to my channel, or even average viewers just taking a quick look at it, that you already know my opinions on this movie. My hour-long review of the movie in question from January 2019 has gained a lot of attention since then. It has become the 10th most viewed video on my channel, and surprisingly had way more likes than dislikes. That I wasn't expecting at all. I thought everyone was going to hate that review because 95% of the video was me ranting at the top of my voice about every single minute problem I have with the movie, and because most of them didn't see the warning video I uploaded 3 days before explaining why it was nothing but ranting. But I have this feeling that the reason why it became somewhat popular is because I was the only one ranting about the problems with the Blobber series before the unlucky Tug did it. Actually, that was one of the reasons I finally felt like reviewing this movie in the first place, considering at that point he wasn't going to follow or watch the show anymore after season 21, and that he wasn't going to review the Blobber movie the same way he reviewed The Great Race and Journey Beyond Sodor. So I thought I could review the movie for him, and I felt as if there were obvious problems with the movie and season 22 that everyone else in the fandom hadn't noticed or had overlooked. But after everything that I had watched this month, nay, 6 months in terms of the video series production, I still stand by my statements from that review nearly 3 years ago that this is still the worst movie in the Thomas the Tank Engine series I have ever seen. This movie was clearly made to set up this ridiculous concept of Thomas going all over the world, but the reason for going abroad is so rushed and poorly thought out. So, some cocky race car called Ace forces himself on Sodor dangerously and tells Thomas that he is taking a ship from Brendam to Africa to take part in an international racing event, even though he should have taken a ship from Australia to Africa. He convinces Thomas to fulfill his lifelong dream of wanting to see the world. He asks the Fat Controller about it, who agrees and disagrees at the same time. It's hard to describe what he's saying here, but when that doesn't work, he dumps Annie and Clarabelle in the yard, asks gullible young Carly to load him onto a ship that coincidentally is going to the same exact place Ace is going, even though Cranky and Big Mickey are right there and they should have stopped her. And when the others find out Thomas is missing, the Fat Controller grows massively concerned about his whereabouts and his safety. But if he deeply cares about Thomas's safety, he would have straight up said no to Thomas's idea, instead of saying,
If you can figure out a way of actually doing it.
But no, we have to make him say that to make this international endeavour happen in the first place. He needs to say it, otherwise there's no movie. There had to be much better ways on making Thomas go around the world. There can be, and there are. I'll tell you what they are later. And I don't really think this would be so bad if it weren't for the fact that the last Thomas movie that was released not even a year before this one has already done this kind of story. That movie featured Thomas leaving Sodor for a selfish reason without anyone's permission and going to places he has never been to before, except the places he went to were huge, hot, mean-spirited, and and had people that treated him like a slave and didn't want him to escape. So after that horrible, worrying experience, why would he think that Africa or any other country in the world would treat him any better than the mainland steelworks? I mean, the first foreign vehicle he talks to tricks him into getting lost halfway across the world, and the first foreign human he talks to mocks him for being small in size. And Thomas never, ever shows a single ounce of regret for the selfish decision he made. There was an entire song in the last movie that shows how homesick Thomas was and how much he missed his friends back home, all because of his decision to spite James. And this was just when he was in England, Sodor's literal next door neighbour. But he never thinks about his Sodor friends once in the entirety of this movie, as if he thinks following a dickish race car around the world or doing different jobs in dangerous countries means more to him than the people and engines who care about him and that he had spent his entire life with. And after all of the many endless months searching for him, worrying about him, and doing all that they could to bring Thomas back, even going so far as to have the Fat Controller leave Sodor to look for him, which is completely unnecessary, and has never been resolved, by the way, Thomas never gets a single tiny punishment for leaving everyone behind without warning. What?! There are a lot of new characters in this movie, but since most of them are either recolors for the background or only have a couple lines of dialogue with no display of their personalities, I'm not going to talk about them. I'm just gonna talk about the only two that matter here, Nia and Ace. Ace is a dickish asshole through and through. He never thinks about safety. He never thinks about other people's safety. He puts impossible ideas into Thomas's head. He gives Thomas bad advice, and he doesn't care about the fact that Thomas upset his friend. And that's all for him here. He never learns from his reckless behavior. He never feels sorry for Thomas. There's no redemption for him. He just leaves the movie in the last 15 minutes. Good riddance. And of course, there's Nia, the one that they really wanted to push. She actually is alright in this movie. She's adventurous, she's caring, she has a decent sense of humor sometimes.
I didn't realize you were going backwards for fun. I do that sometimes too, you know.
She thinks about situations logically, she's a good voice of reason, and she tries hard to pound some sense into Thomas's and Ace's heads. My real problem with her, in this movie anyway, is her backstory. Or lack thereof. She seems to enjoy her life in Africa just fine, and she has good friends like Kwaku. But then she suddenly decides to leave him and Africa behind the same way Thomas did. It isn't until the end of the movie where she tells us one of the reasons why she would leave. Her old shed was destroyed and doesn't have a home to go back to. Why the fuck didn't she tell Thomas about this on the ship that's heading to Rio? Maybe the plot for the rest of the movie could have been Thomas finding Nia a new home in other countries. Not only would that fulfill Thomas's dream of going all around the world, but also a reason to bring Nia along with him. Speaking of Thomas, I really need to talk about him. He was dead likable in the Brenner era because of his new voice, charming sense of humor, and his caring side displayed in plenty of episodes. But Thomas is completely unlikable in this movie, and it's not just his selfish decision to go around the world either. It's his constant belief in this movie that he can do everything by himself, even in the many situations where he is clearly struggling and straining. He still says that he doesn't need help. When he is struggling to pull a long train of trucks up the African hill.
And I can pull this train I'm by myself.
When he is thinking about what to do when he can't find Ace?
Can I help?
No, Nia. No, you can't.
When they are nearly out of water in the Amazonian rainforest?
Stop for water? Honestly, Nia, we don't have time for you to stop and fill your water tanks.
Even when he is trying to save Nia after an avalanche, after realizing the error of his and Ace's ways and searching all over China to apologize for his behavior, even then, he still says,
I can do this by myself!
My God, this is painful! The only good things about this movie are the fact that there isn't any form of narration. I think the show is now at the point where the voice acting can tell the stories for us. Too bad they didn't stay in this direction. Some of the songs in this movie I actually really like, which include Wake Up, Free and Easy, and I'm Sorry. And I also like that Where in the World is Thomas features the biggest amount of continuity references in the show's history. Even references to things we hoped would be non-canon.
How could there be an island around here that's unknown? What if it was always covered in mist? Oh, that sounds very mysterious. Oh.
And that's it. That's everything good I could find about the movie. Everything else about it is awful. 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 It's a shameless, brainless, rushed, sloppy pilot for a series that's going to paint the series in a strange, divisive, controversial light. Instead of respecting the original source material while executing this idea, it instead pisses all over the face of realism. That's evidenced by the constant bouncing, impossible journeys, and adding railway lines to places that never had them. There wasn't any care or attention thrown into this movie, unlike the other movies we've seen. It's just a poorly thought out rush job that shits all over the rules the Brenner era and the original source material had invented. That fact is made clear after the first minute of the movie. They knew what they were doing. Look at that, his bike is clipping through his thigh. And literally every other person in the fanbase has written a much better version of this international adventure and Nia's introduction to Sodor. Thomas Fan 2002 has thought of better. The Unlucky Tug has thought of better. For fuck's sake, even I, a brainless autistic 25-year-old who isn't any good at writing stories at all, has written something better than this story. The stories are linked in the description below, and an audio adaptation will be uploaded at a later date. So, that does it. That was every single one of the 13 Thomas the Tank Engine movies reviewed in one video. And thank God it's all over. What do I think of these movies as a whole? Well, I like 7 of them. The Great Discovery, Hero of the Rails, Blue Mountain Mystery, King of the Railway, Tale of the Brave, The Adventure Begins, and Sodor's Legend of the Lost Treasure. But the rest of them were either mediocre or just plain awful. Calling All Engines, Misty Island Rescue, Day of the Diesels, The Great Race, Journey Beyond Sodor, and this utter disgrace to the franchise. The concept of hour-long special episodes of the show is really not a bad one. If you've got the right people, they can be really great. Most of them test the characters with big things that might not have been able to fit into a normal episode format, unless it's a connected story arc. And most of these have really unique and interesting story ideas. Discovering an old abandoned town and rebuilding it, getting lost on a mysterious island close to Sodor, meeting a scared little engine with a troubled past, building an all-new branch line over a cavern that houses a lost pirate ship, or the engines taking part in a huge railway show on the mainland. And while some of these specials execute those ideas perfectly, others display them poorly, opening up massive floodgates of missed potential, or they just didn't work, period. But what I like about most of these specials, except for the final 3, is that they make us discover more and more of the island of Sodor. They are building new stations and lines to parts of the island we've never had access to, like the airport, the search and rescue center, and the Harwick branch line. Or they are discovering abandoned parts of the island no one on the show has ever seen before, like Great Waterton, the Diesel Works, the Blue Mountain Quarry, Olstead Castle, and the Miniature Railway. They truly felt like special events with all of these new railway expansion plans on display, seeing more of our beloved home we have been following for years. So, overall, the movies are not that bad. Half of them may be boring, frustrating, or will make you want to quit the show because of these bad decisions, but the other half is grand, epic, heartwarming, emotional, and truly cinematic. I'm glad that I had watched the 7 movies I liked all over again. They made me proud to be a fan of this series. I'm done. I'm done! I'm done! I'm finally done with this series! Oh my god, I'm finally done. I am done with the editing, I'm done with the recording. Now I can just sit back, lie down, collapse, and sleep for the rest of the year. Nothing more for me to do.
It's Thomas the Tank Engine, hip 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 hooray. Chugga chugga chug chug chuff chuff chuff, he rides along the way. And when you hear that whistle, it can only be one train. Our favorite little engine, Thomas is his name. Thomas the Tank Engine rolling along. All of his friends will be coming along. Thomas, we love you. He's a really useful engine with a heart that's big and strong. He chugga chugga chuff chuffs, working hard, helping everyone. Thomas, he has lots of friends, and you can be one too. Just clap 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 and sing along. Thomas, we love you. Thomas the Tank Engine rolling along. All of his friends will be coming along. Thomas, we love you. There's Gordon and Henry, Edward, James and Toby, Annie and Clarabelle, Terrence and Bertie, Diesel, Duck and Daisy, lots more friends for you. He's always up to mischief, that cheeky little train. He chugga chugga chuff chuffs everywhere, he's always playing games. The fat controller scolds him, but he loves him just the same. Our favorite little engine, Thomas is his name.